From 1929 to 1939, millions of Americans faced devastating economic hardship.
Strange foods people ate to survive the Great Depression. The 1920s. Money was tight, jobs were scarce, and food scanty. So people had to get creative with their eating habits. Some of these meals they came up with might sound strange today, but back then, they were lifesavers. So what's interesting is that many of these foods are still around. You might even eat some of them without realizing where they came from. So, how about we take a look at 10 unusual meals that people ate to survive the Great Depression? Let's jump in. Number 1, dandelion salad.
I take dandelions, bring them home to my mother. We ate a lot of dandelions. They're very good for you, too.
Fresh vegetables were not always easy to find, especially for families struggling to put food on the table. Instead of going to the store, people looked to their own backyards for something edible, dandelion greens. These leafy weeds, which most people ignore or try to get rid of today, were actually a valuable source of nutrients during the Great Depression. Families would go outside, pick dandelion leaves straight from the ground, wash them thoroughly, and use them in all kinds of ways. Some people ate them raw in simple salad, often adding a splash of vinegar or a pinch of salt to help balance their naturally bitter taste. Others boiled or sautéed them to make them softer and milder in flavor. In some cases, dandelion greens were even used as a substitute for spinach in cooked dishes. Believe it or not, dandelion greens haven't disappeared. They've actually become trendy. You can now find them in high-end restaurants, health-conscious recipes, and even in herbal teas. But back in the 1930s, they were a necessity, which helped families get much-needed vitamins without spending a dime. 2. Potato pancakes.
One side is golden brown, so we're going to flip the potato pancakes.
Potatoes were one of the most affordable and filling foods during the Great Depression, making them a household staple. One of the simplest ways people prepared them was by making potato pancakes. They would grate potatoes, mix them with a little flour and water, and fry them until crispy. With no eggs, milk, or extra ingredients, this meal was as basic as it gets, but it provided much-needed sustenance. Today, potato pancakes are still enjoyed in many forms, such as hash browns or latkes, often with added ingredients for flavor. But back then, they were more than just a meal. They were a necessity, helping families stretch their limited food supplies while staying full. 3. Cornbread in milk. Cornbread was one of the simplest and most affordable foods to make during the Great Depression. With just cornmeal, water, and a little fat, families could bake a hearty bread that lasted for days. To make it stretch even further, many people crumbled leftover cornbread into a bowl of milk and ate it like cereal. If they were lucky enough to have buttermilk, they'd use that instead for a little extra flavor and richness. It might seem unusual today, but this simple dish is still considered a comfort food in some parts of the U.S. For many, it brings back memories of tough times, resilience, and the ability to make the most out of what was available. 4. Peanut butter and onion sandwiches. Peanut butter was one of the most affordable sources of protein during the Great Depression, which made it a staple in many households. Onions, which are another cheap and widely available ingredient, were often used to add flavor to otherwise bland meals. So, in a creative but unexpected combination, people started making peanut butter and onion sandwiches. The creamy, nutty spread, mixed with the sharp, pungent bite of raw onion, created a surprisingly filling and nutritious meal. You don't hear much about this combo today, but for some struggling families back then, it was an easy way to stay full without spending much. It might not be a go-to sandwich now, but during tough times, people made do with whatever they had. Number 5. Depression meatloaf with oatmeal or crackers.
Looks good. Into the oven.
Meat was a luxury during the Great Depression, so families had to get creative to make it last. They stretched it by mixing in cheap fillers like oats, breadcrumbs, or crushed crackers to bulk up dishes like meatloaf. Some families took it a step further and skipped the meat altogether, using mashed beans as a substitute for protein. Meatloaf remains a popular comfort food today, often made with extra seasonings and toppings. But back then, people cared more about getting through the day rather than the taste. And it got the job done. 6. Mock apple pie. No apples. Apples were often too expensive for struggling families, but that didn't stop people from finding a clever workaround. By boiling Ritz crackers with sugar, cinnamon, and lemon juice, they managed to recreate the taste and texture of apple pie filling without using any apples at all. The flaky crackers even mimic the feel of baked fruit, making for a surprisingly convincing substitute. Today, this mock apple pie recipe still exists as a fun throwback to resourceful cooking, but during the Great Depression, it was a way for families to enjoy a familiar dessert when real fruit was out of reach. Number 7. Bologna casserole.
We're going to do that and get it in the oven. You're going to bake it for 400 degrees for 15 minutes.
Bologna was one of the most affordable meats available, so families had to get creative to turn it into a full meal. One of the simplest yet heartiest solutions was bologna casserole. It was a dish made by layering slices of bologna with canned tomatoes and baking it all together. The tomatoes helped keep everything moist and added a bit of tangy flavor, while the bologna provided protein in a time when meat was a luxury. Some versions even included pasta or stale bread to make the dish stretch further. You don't see this casserole too often today, but during the Great Depression, it was a go-to for struggling families. It might not have been a gourmet meal, but it was filling, easy to prepare, and used ingredients that were cheap and readily available. Number 8. Vinegar pie. Lemons were far too expensive for many families, but that didn't mean they didn't go without a tart or a sweet dessert. Instead, they found a clever workaround, using vinegar to create a lemon-like pie filling. When combined with sugar, butter, and eggs, the vinegar provided just the right amount of acidity to mimic the taste of real lemons, creating a surprisingly delicious and comforting treat. Amazingly, vinegar pie is still made in some bakeries today, often as a nostalgic nod to Depression-era cooking. While it may not be as well known as traditional fruit pies, it remains a testament to the ingenuity of the time. Most people don't realize that this simple yet flavorful dessert was born out of sheer necessity, proving that even in the hardest times, people found ways to enjoy a little sweetness. 9. Hoover stew. Named after President Herbert Hoover, Hoover stew was a budget-friendly meal made from whatever cheap ingredients were available. The basic version included pasta, canned tomatoes, sliced hot dogs, and any vegetables people could find. It was a common dish in soup kitchens and struggling households because it was easy to make in large batches and could feed a lot of people with very little money. If you have ever thrown together a quick pasta and hot dog meal, you basically had a modern version of Hoover stew. Finally, number 10. Lard sandwiches. Butter was far too expensive for most families, so they had to make do with what they had, plain lard. Lard is basically rendered pig fat, and people would spread it directly onto bread as a substitute, sometimes sprinkling a little sugar for sweetness or salt for extra flavor. It was not fancy by any means, but it provided much needed calories and kept hunger at bay. Interestingly, lard is making a comeback in modern cooking, especially in baking and frying. But let's be honest, most of us would probably pass on eating plain lard sandwiches today. People had to get creative to survive the Great Depression, and while some of these foods might sound strange now, they helped millions get through tough times. What's wild is that a lot of them are still around today. Have you ever tried any of these? Would you eat a peanut butter and onion sandwich? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more historic deep dives. See you next time, and as always, thanks for watching.